Welcome, welcome. You listen to 360 Info. I'm your host, Hamtonio. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. We got some sunshine in Cleveland. And my brother has brought it all the way from Dallas. Yes, to Cleveland. We got a special show. We're not going to interrupt you. Just a few announcements here and there. But we bringing it to you full blast on 360 Info. Because we got brother Ashra Kwesi in town, and he's here in the studio for y'all. So you better call up everybody. You hear I say everybody. You better call up everybody to tune in today. We're going to deal with no misconceptions, no doubting and facts of void and any of that kind of stuff like that. We coming right at you with the real deal, because I got to bring it to you like that. It's a subject matter that it caused a lot of problems and controversy and through our community, and this is I think is something that we all need to put together and iron this thing out, because that's the only thing I think, one of the things that's going to bring us together, because we're going to go way back. When I say back in the time and see what all this started and where all this come from. When we talk about our spirituality and African spirituality, what is African spirituality? Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit. And how to relate to our Western religions right here today. That's what we're going to be talking about a little bit on the show. And later on at 5 p.m. at Cleveland State, we're going to give you an up-close front view in personal what's going on, and eyewitness account what's going on, because we got brother Ashra Kwesi. I'm in the studio by myself. My co-host is not in. I got my brother Kaka in from Pittsburgh in there filming, and we going, I tell you what, just call up the folks now and tell them to tune in here. You can go to the internet, www.newstalkcleveland.com, and click on. You can hear it anywhere in the world right here. So, hey, I'm going to take a quick break there, and I'm going to come back, and we're going to introduce brother Ashra Kwesi uninterrupted. Just a few announcements here and there, and we're going to bring it to you today. And, you're going to want to come on out to CSU this evening, because we're bringing it in. It's kicking off our whole African History Month, Sankofa in June. I like to start off with a little informative stuff, some good, powerful lecture, and we also got Dr. T. Moore talking about that melanin. He's matter of fact, his plane is landing right now in Cleveland. So Cleveland is the place to be. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna be right back at you.
You push this if you have to call.
Yeah. All right. He gonna come. He only gonna do one commercial. Come right back at us.
Showrooms are 9520 Woodland Avenue and 3319 East 93rd.
Oh,
Street. Call 216.
I did set that back right there, didn't I?
What's that?
The green bag.
The green one?
Washers, dryers, stoves, refrigerators, and freezers. All makes and
I knew
models.
it.
We service appliances and
Got a quick second.
She have a green bag.
We wish to thank all of our past and current customers. We appreciate and value all of them. 1490 AM, WERE, Cleveland Heights.
Welcome back, welcome back. You listen to 360 Info. I'm your host, Hamtonio. Just a quick announcement. Planting Seed for a Child, Inc. is having a function today at the Good Shepherd Church. That's 23599 Cedar Road. That's in Lyndhurst, all right? They're sowing the seeds for kindness to educate a child, one village at a time. They're doing a fundraiser, the gala, and it's just today at the Good Shepherd. I got a silent auction, raffle drawing, organization logo t-shirts, storytelling, and much more, and dinner. The tickets are $35 if you want to be part of that today. Miss Jan J. Bass, 216-407-3725. That's 407-3725. If you want to go out and support that, that's something that's good as well. Going to start roughly about 6:30, 6 o'clock. You can come on down to the lecture and then be there on over there and to support them. It's helping, we got to, bridge this gap between us and the motherland over there. So she's doing something in reference to that as well. So we're going to make a few other announcements, but we're going to get this thing started in the studio today. It's a brother that's, and it's a shame that a lot of folks in the community in general, and especially the African American community, to me, don't know enough about this gentleman. You have to respect anyone that's been, devoted anything in any subject matter. They're pretty much their adult life into it. So you have to respect that particular person. But what draws extra attention to this, a brother that's been going over to Africa for 31 years and studying on location about African people and our history, and has been, on the front line and sounding the trumpets and the horns on what's going on and some of the truths and some of the myths that's been going on and the stories that actually we've been told about ourselves, and which we don't. Brother Ashra Kwesi is a lecturer. He's been lecturing all over the world, and it is something that we can't just shake a stick at about that. When he's been called all over the world, and people have been just astonished and just amazed at some of the documentation that he has picked up throughout those whole 31 years, and also a student of the great Dr. Yosef Ben-Yaakov. Brother Ashra Kwesi, welcome to Cleveland.
Brother Land, it's an honor to be back on the show again. 360 Info. We definitely need some info about us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Brother, I guess it's becoming a little regular bringing you in because you can't just get it in 2 hours all, our history, because when you go back thousands and thousands of years,
It's not shallow water.
Yeah, absolutely. I asked you a question last night. I said, all these years that you've been going over there, 31 years, are you still learning something? I asked you that last night.
Right, still learning. There's always something to see. There's always something that I didn't see before. There's always a place and space. Keep in mind that these are books in stone.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us can't relate a lot of times to books in stone because we're familiar with books with English language, but actually our ancestors wrote endlessly on the monuments and temples. In fact, the world's first language, called Medu Neter. I know this may be unfamiliar to some of the listening audience, but the Medu Neter is an ancient language going back countless thousands of years called the sacred language of God.
Mm-hmm.
This is long before Hebrew, long before Arabic, long before Aramaic, and all the contemporary language that we know today. Here on the monuments and temples, in some cases bigger than some of the buildings downtown Cleveland, our ancestors wrote endlessly on the monuments and temples as though they knew that one day we would forget our story. And this is what I spent, as you mentioned, 31 years of my life. Giving respect to my teacher, Dr. Yosef Ben-Yaakov, and 14 years with him, and documenting with many things that we have been led to believe has been pretty much a Western civilization, when in fact these things were plagiarized from African people. And I think it's extremely important, especially when we take the state of our children, what's happening to the low self-esteem and all these things.
Absolutely.
We can understand that once this information is exposed to African children, it's an inspiration and motivation for them to want to learn, to want to know who we are. But of course, if that child is in an educational system and nothing is told or very little that we were savages and heathens and all these other negative connotations.
And slavery was the best thing that ever happened.
Slavery was the best thing that ever happened to us. And of course, you're going to have a rejection. One doesn't want to know about oneself. One's going to have a hatred towards self. And above all, when taking brothers and sisters back to the temples and monuments, we see the black divinity or the black representation or the black divine images on the temples, where many of these ideas were copied by Europeans. For instance, when we say at the end of our prayers, we say Amen. And this is going to be surprising to some and have no idea that that was actually taken from Africa by the Greeks and brought into the Western world and incorporated at the end of our prayers to this very day when we say Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Amen is a black deity or black god, jet black. Now even today we see that astrophysicists are telling us about black matter. So here our ancestors understood that God is black. Okay, that representation using the science of key carbon atom is black. Everything, the universe is black. Everything is coming out of blackness. And the Western world ends with their prayer, Amen, that represents the invisible spirit that's in all of us. So we still see in Timothy chapter 1, it talks about I'm in the invisible spirit. So it's only when we go back to start to investigate. We are an old people. In fact, I can go as far as to say that we're so old that we got Alzheimer's now.
That's funny.
Right. Yeah, we are the first people. All anthropological evidence and paleontology and all the sciences and mitochondrial DNA and all these sciences they're coming up with gives direction back to Africa. African people were not just standing around waiting for Europeans and Asians and others to come and tell us these things. So many lectures that I deal with, dealing with civilization, also dealing with the African origin of Christianity, and tonight I'll be dealing with the African origin of the Bible. And of course that's an eyebrow raiser to many of us because we think of the Bible as just a one book, but in fact it was plagiarized from many spiritual ideas that African people wrote thousands of years ago. Even if we look at the King James Version of the Bible in the opening of the pages, it tells you diligently compared and revised. Now that's, as soon as you open up the page, that's on the first page. So an intelligent person would ask, what do you mean by diligently compared and revised? That means that there are some earlier works, there's some earlier spiritual writings. And then first of all, we got to look at why does Egypt, especially Alexandria, why is it that the Western Bible that we know, where was it written at? Where was it first written at, known as the Septuagint version of the Bible? It was written in Alexandria, Egypt. Now, who wrote this Bible? This, during the time of the Ptolemies, these are the generals of Alexander that we are taught to call the Great. Nothing great about him coming in to plunder in Africa. Europeans are not going to call any conqueror the Great. But getting back to what I was saying, after him, his generals took over like Ptolemy. And this is where he got, at that time, the Hellenistic Jews at that time to write the Greek version of the Bible. This is known as the Septuagint around 250 BC. So when we understand why Egypt, because during the time when Alexander came in, they plundered many temples that I take groups every year. Temples like Ipit-Asut, known as Karnak. Temples like the Temple of Haru. These are great monuments. These are books in stone. There they plagiarized ancient papyruses that we call books today and incorporated this into the Alexandria library that they built. Now, prior to the Byzantine Christians burning that library, here they were able to plagiarize many African spiritual writings in the making of Europe's first and early Bibles, right there in Alexandria, Egypt. This is not mystical information. Anyone can find this information. It's documented information.
Okay.
We also have to look at, this is why Egypt could not be in the Middle East to make, or they call the Middle East. It could not be in Africa that they call the Middle East. It had to be somewhere else. By calling it the Middle East, many of us don't look at Egypt as being in Africa. And that alone is equally done by Europeans, by a man named Hegel, who said Egypt was not a part of Africa. So black folks would start to investigate Egypt to see where many ideas that we were taught to believe in, many of the Bibles and many religious stories were copied directly from the reliefs and the books in stone. For instance, when we look at the opening pages of the Bible, we see the creation story. We see that Genesis is a Greek word that means the beginning. But is that the beginning? Is there an earlier story? Is there a story? Is there a prototype of this story? Is there a story that is the foundation of where the Western Bible came from? Yes, there is. It was started by African people, by black people. And there in the British Museum that I go to many times when I'm there lecturing, I always stop there. And of all the colossal pieces that were stolen out of Africa, that many people from all over the world come to look at, there's one piece that very few people pay any attention to. And it's a stone called the Memphite Theology Stone. Here, this stone is important. It was found by an African Cushite king named Shabaka. Now, Shabaka is 700 years BC. It was already owed to him. Here we see the African people's spiritual creation story of Ptah uttering the universe, saying, "Let there be light." Many of the ideas that we see on this Memphite Theology Stone, we can see is identical to what we see as Genesis in the Bible, the creation of the world, the creation of man and woman. Now, the only difference is in the African creation story, man and woman were created simultaneously. There was not a story that a rib was taken from this man named Asar, okay, in the making of Aset, who was the world's first woman. They were created simultaneously.
Okay, question then, Brother Kwesi. Why do you think that, that happened, that story, changed up on us?
Africa is a matrilineal system. And what I mean by matrilineal system, everything is based off of, as our ancient African ancestor, Kemetic African ancestors saw as the womb. That means that the womb is the foundation of African people's beginning. We did not have a misogynistic nature towards the woman. The patriarchs, or those who invaded, they brought in a hatred towards the woman. So what we see in the Bible, we see more of a misogynistic story. The story of Adam and Eve, the story of rib was taken from Adam to make the woman, and the making of this woman, she eats from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and that's the reason for the world's sins. And then there are some stories, we are told that the natural cycle of the woman, monthly cycle, was to remind her of this woman's first sin. African people did not have that story. It was based off of spiritual balance. Man and woman were created simultaneously. It was not a story of a rib and all these stories. So we have to go back to the understanding of how the African man saw the African woman. And he saw her as a balance, an equal. It is called ma'at. Okay, that is balance.
Yeah, because I have had one of your DVDs, and it was just amazing. You try to talk to people and have them, listen and show the documentation that you offer here. That when you show those balance and when you have figures in reference to the male and female principle, a lot of times the woman was destroyed. Just like they blew the noses off in some of the temples and the statues there. But when he had that balance of the two deities, male and female, or goddess and goddess concepts, the woman's head was chopped off. Right. She was taken totally from the whole scene of the picture. You know what I mean? So you have to logically ask yourself a question: why would somebody deface the woman like that?
Right.
Why would you go in there and do that? That type of degradation to the female counterpart. Why?
Well, if you have a misogyny towards the woman, then these are the kind of things that would happen. Our African ancestors saw that your first baptism took place in the amniotic fluid of our mother's womb. So the amniotic fluid of our mother's womb, that was spiritual. That's a natural process. But if someone has a hatred of a woman, like Michael Bradley in his book, The Prehistoric Sources of Western Man's Sexism, Aggression, and Racism, I have respect for this European because he's looking at how the European had a hatred, for the woman. Whereas in Africa, it was based off of a spiritual balance. You could not see the God without the goddess, nor the goddess without the God. Now that's one of the things I've been asking from a lot in the creation story in Genesis. Let us make man in our own image. Now it seems like us, that means there's two people here. That's like a husband and a wife would say, let us make a baby in our own image. So no one has been able to answer this us. So again, it seems as though the patriarchs who are coming from the north forgot to take out the us.
Yeah, well, we're good as time go on and trying to make it fit into a plan or religion or because even with the amen stuff, over the years, rather than them knowing that that's an Egyptian god, they say, well, it means amen means it's let it be so, we in agreement, so we're making work for us, as time go on, and we're good for doing that, rather than looking at the origins of actually where it comes from and what it's about. Because when you do that, now you have to go and study the people that it come from.
Exactly.
You just can't take that word out and say, okay, I'm just going to take the word or whatever they call Jesus, or how Jesus' name, through linguistics changed throughout the time. But you got to go back and research the people, and see how their concept of it, and see if it's gelling up with the same information you've been getting as your religion started in Africa, went to Europe and come to you. Go straight to the source and see what they have to say.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we do these presentations. The presentation is not for people to believe what I'm saying. I'll make that clear.
Okay.
The information is for people to think. I come with critical analytical analysis of information of 31 years of my life. I will be dealing with the reliefs and the books in stone. When I met Dr. Ben at Long Beach State many years ago, back in the early 70s, I was impressed by the information and blown away as well. Never heard the information before, and I asked Dr. Ben, can you prove this? He said, young man, I can take you back and show you. So that was always a dream, to return back to Africa to see this. I did not know that I would spend 31 years nonstop. I have not missed a year in 31 years of my life, researching not only in Egypt, Sudan, all the way to the foothill of the mountains of the moon known as Kilimanjaro. There I was able to see and do the comparative analysis, which I'm going to do in my presentation tonight. I'm going to look at the pictorial pictures of the Bible, and we're going to see the books in stone to see without question these things were plagiarized. But we have to keep in mind that this is not alien. These were created by black people, African people. It was created by our ancestors. That's how we've got to see it. We can't see it from an alien point of view or something from some planet or somewhere else. And once we start to look at it, I think we can start to develop our own divinity. That's very
Yes.
important. When we understand what do I mean by this divinity? It's the black divinity that was taken away and destroyed in African people. And everything that we see in relationship to ourselves is a negative connotation,
Absolutely.
even to this
Absolutely.
very day in the church. Oh, free my evil black heart, O Lord. Wash my heart whiter than snow, show me the great white way. So everything has been related to a negative in relation to our divinity. And when we bring our divinity back, we'll have unity in the community. When young brothers and sisters can see that divinity emanating from each and every one of us, then it's impossible for a young person to harm another black person in the community.
Right. And that's where I want to go and stop at this and interject this, because this is the question, you know, as far as on my plight for history and trying to, you know, turn people on to at least checking out the information and going back and doing research, and they discarded, oh, that's just history. You know, how this history stuff is going to help me, or how it's going to stop them young brothers out there from killing each other, and you know, that's just history, that's just some academia. You know, why should I be worried about history?
Well, that's a sad thing to look at it. You know, keep in mind, one of the great ancestors and master teachers, Carter G. Woodson, told us, if a race has no history, if it has no worthwhile tradition, it becomes a negligible factor in the thought of the world. It stands to have been exterminated. Again, if you wake up in the morning and all of a sudden you got an attack of Alzheimer's and you have no idea who you are, who your family is, how would you start your day? So equally, that applies to the race itself. If we have no idea of who we are, then it's not going to reflect in anything that we are in the culture of this country. When you go to Chinatown, they're expressing their history, their culture, their ethnicity by calling it Chinatown, or whether it's Korean town, or even the Vietnamese who just got off the boat in Southern California, Little Saigon. They have no problems because no one has taken and stripped them of their culture, their heritage and who they are, their history as a people. So they have a pride in expressing who they are. But you can tell when a people have been ripped of their culture and their spiritual way of life and who they are as a people, then that people will have a hatred not only to themselves but also to their ethnicity, to their culture, and it will not reflect anywhere. Okay, and this is what we see in the African community. So that's the importance of history.
So you think, as far as this, you know, the society from which we live in, have played a great part of that as well, with all the negative images
without question,
and
we
imagery?
are African people. Let's deal with the reality of the Ma'afa. African people are the only people who were taken from the African continent and brought over here, and in order to make a slave, we were stripped of our names, our culture, our history. You were not allowed to practice anything. In fact, we were not allowed to read or write. We were caught reading or writing in this country. We were whipped and even killed. So when you take that in consideration, our names, our history, even the little part that Roots played on Kuta Kinte and beating Toby into him, this was all part of the psychological damage to strip a people of their identity, because that's how you make a slave. When you strip your history, you can make a slave. So this is what we see this going on today. We were called boys because we knew nothing beyond our master. When you talk to your son, that's your boy, because your son is looking at you. You're his whole world.
Yes.
That's you know, that's all you know. So when the European, okay, or the white slave master said, boy, we knew nothing beyond him. So today we're in an information age. Today we're starting to look. Today we're starting to break through the whole matrix of what slavery has done to us. And in that process, we've got to study, we got to go back to our ancestral story. If all others, whether it be paleontology, as I said, biblical archaeology, and all these others, are going back, taking things from the temples and tombs, it's time for African people to equally to go back. Even to this day, the monuments are being plundered. The Medu Neter has been stripped off of the monuments and temples, as though somebody knows that there will be a final emancipation, and that final emancipation is of our mind. And that's what we've got to look at, Brother Lynn. So we've got to develop, and we're honored that you are creating a communiversity. A communiversity, as Bobby Wright called it, is that having lectures in the community for our people to start to think about who we are as a people. And this is the planting of the seeds. We all have within us a genetic library. But that genetic library is locked up through self-hatred and denial of self. It's only until we unlock that inner spirit of who we are, that inner knowledge of who we are, then we can start to see this information. When you go back to Africa, these are the greatest monuments on the planet Earth. When you look at the Great Pyramid of Akekufu, was there a Wailing Wall yet? No, did not exist. Was there a place called the Kaaba yet? Did not exist. These are the greatest and oldest monuments on the planet Earth, not built by extraterrestrials, but built by black men, not built by slaves, but built by African people thousands of years ago.
It still got a problem knowing how they did it.
It's still got a problem trying to figure out how they were done.
We're going to go to the lines. If you got a question or comment, try to make it brief so we can get them all in. 216-578-1490, 216-578-1490. We got Connie on the line. How you doing, Connie? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing pretty good.
Mhm.
I'm going to make it this brief.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask the professor. I had heard that Israel is in Africa. And also got one more question. Make it right quick. Now, are the original Jews black? Those are my two questions.
All right, thank you for your comment.
Okay, we have the early Cushite Hebrews that did exist, okay, but my point is, did it start with them? No, it did not. It goes back thousands of years before that period. Now, I go to Ethiopia annually every winter. In fact, I'll be going in December. And we go to the Aga, Beta Israel village. In fact, Dr. Ben is of a African Hebrew background, okay? So we go to the villages and we see some of the early Hebrews from that period. But the problem is because of our religious knowledge that we see here today in the Western world and what we know of religion, we look at that as the beginning. We know nothing about the ancient African knowledge that predates that time period of the Hebrew religion. And those are the things that I'm going to talk about today. We have to go back long before that. But keep in mind that the Hebrew religion came about out of war. We're talking about the patriarchs coming from the north, and we're talking about the African spiritual knowledge, the knowledge that came up out of the fallopian tube of the Nile Valley. And during that period, we see that Israel was like the border country of the north and the south, where many of these wars took place. In fact, the taking of the African Canaanites' land, okay, was all done by many of the patriarchs, okay, that became Israel. Now, keep in mind that the Babylonian Talmud, one of the most racist versions of the Bible, that started at the Conference of Jamnia in 90 AD, that ended up in 550 in the Babylonian Talmud. This is the Ham story. This is one of the most vicious stories that have killed the spirit of African people, that we were cursed. That was not created by African people, nor was it created by the African Hebrews, because it's not part of their story, and they do not accept the Ashkenazi or European Jews, okay, who actually created this story. So we've got to understand chronology, and that's one of the things we have lost. Times and events and what took place, so it becomes all a stew to us, and we don't know how and when certain things took place.
Right.
So when I talk about the creation in the beginning, we can't start with the Hebrew period. We've got to go back and see that African people created these spiritual stories thousands of years ago.
Right, absolutely. One of the problems I have is, a lot of the folks, a lot of times we be religious on everything, and so religious, and I guess to validate a lot of things that you do as far as your spirituality and religion is concerned. The problem I have with a lot of our religions is, just let me just throw it out. Christianity, you can say any of them. History have to validate, your religion as far as spirituality, because they're actually talking about dates, places, people, and things of that nature. So to validate that, you have to be a historian, and history has to go along with to validate this information. I mean, I can sit up here and tell you anything, just like you coming and gonna show stuff that's been carved into the temple walls for thousands of years. That's information. That's factual. Regardless if the information is true or not, it's there. That information is there. But you got folks like the John, Paul, things of that nature. I'm told that they don't even can't even find no burial sites for any of these individuals
There's a question if many of these people even
existed. So you got to have the history. Yeah.
Religion is made up of allegory and mythology. That's what makes up religion, allegory and mythology. Even in ancient Kemet, we've had our spiritual stories that were made up, and a lot of it was based off of the spiritual natural forces that they saw around them, in some cases told in anthropomorphic form. As I said, the universe. They saw the universe as a symbol of a goddess. okay, called Nut. Now, why would they have the universe as a goddess? And it's called the arch of the heavens. Interesting, in the Bible, it speaks of the heavens as the arch of the heavens. They saw the universe as a macro womb, giving birth to the stars, giving birth to the S-U-N sun, like our mothers gave birth to the S-O-N sun. That's spirituality. That's the natural forces that are around us that we're told in anthropomorphic or human forms, okay, as we see them as the representations that our ancestors expressed on the monuments and temples and many of these things that I'll show tonight. So of course we've got to deal with the historical facts, and we can't start with one time, as we repeatedly say. We've got to go back, and as I said before, we have lost chronology. We've got to start to investigate everything, not only Western civilization with history that I've been here before with the reclaiming the African genius. We've dealt with the African origin of Christianity. We don't have institutions to teach this. Most of us go to institutions where we're taught a whole Western civilization. We go to the seminary school where we're taught to deify white images. When you go to Michelangelo, most of us at the Sistine Chapel, we see this as a reality. We see the angelical realm or the white heaven as though this is real representation of what the afterlife looks like, or the Last Supper and all these things. This is called the deification of the European. And this is the sad thing in the psychic of African people, when you cannot see your own divinity.
Yeah, ooh. That's the, we got a call on the line. If you got a call, comment, or question, 216-578-1490, 216-578-1490. We got Jamil on the line. How you doing, Jamil? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Monday Hotep.
Hotep. Hotep means peace, for those who don't know. That's the Kemetic word for peace.
All right, I had a couple questions for the brother Ashra. First question was, I want to know where, well, maybe you might not know about in the city, but where would I go about learning the Egyptian mystery system in the Metal Nectar? Because I've been really interested and really getting deep into it. I have a small knowledge of it, but I've been interested in learning the Metal Nectar and the language and everything, and how to read the Metal Nectar, how to read hieroglyphics. So I had a question about how would I go about, really getting deep into that.
Okay.
And I had a second question, and I'm gonna just hang up and listen. Where do you see our people in the future? With the fall of the white man's economy, and everything, this whole civilization is falling. Where do you see our people in the future and the role that we play in the future?
Oh, big question, brother. Well, first question in reference to, that's one of the reasons why we come to do African Communiversity, so we can start to learn about the information and come to the lectures, and that information can inspire you to start to take the longest journey in your life, and that's the journey into yourself. Unfortunately, we do not have institutions of our own. Okay, we build churches more than educational centers, unfortunately. But of course, you can start to do your own research. Now, of course, the Medu Neter, keep in mind, we're getting it through the translation, okay, into the English language. And of course, we're not going to know all of the Medu Neter, and a lot of the translation is going to be lost. But what we can get out of it is through some of the books like Gardner. Okay, in his book, Wallace Budge has some information. But keep in mind, in ancient times, it took the priest 20 years. So when we take this, it can't be a fad in your life. You've got to start to sacrifice your whole life, as I started with 31 years of my life, and I'm still learning. Most of the time in the Western civilization, it's based off immediate gratification, that we can get it all in one platter within a short period of time. So when you start to partake of this knowledge, start to plan for the rest of your life. But you can start to study the Medu Neter and start to research and start that journey on your own. And then also institutions that may be around, or people who are coming to lecture, or whatever you can get a hold to. So these are some of the things that can help with studying that. Now, in terms of the future of African people, I would not be doing this or talking about African people if I didn't think there was a positive future. I think that we've got to start to have a vision of where we want to be at. Keep in mind, during the time of the so-called new millennium, I call it so-called because how can you count time down and then go back up? If we go with the earliest time period of Normer, that's over 5,000 years ago. So what happened? Why are we writing 2011? But getting back to that time period, keep in mind that the 2000, they have what is called, meaning Europeans, white folks, okay? They have a new millennium society. So they're planning for the next 1,000 years. And I'm sure black folks are not being planned into it. Only we can plan for our future. Only we can have a vision. On the plantation, the slave was not allowed to have a vision for the future or plan. So we've got to start to have a positive vision and plan for that vision. Only we as collectively as a people can plan for that. So I have a positive vision of African people and where we will be at in the future.
Yeah. Also, Raketti Armand, she's I'm trying to get in touch with her right now. She teaches and studies the hieroglyphics, so stay tuned into the show. I'm gonna try to get her on the show and into Cleveland sometime soon. So, and actually, we was talking to Dr. Williams down there at Cleveland State. He's interested in putting on some type of class down there of studying the hieroglyphics. So she's one of the foremost authorities of studying it, and she's been going around the country trying to get us to learn the language, because she's saying that should be our first or second language, studying that, because there's a lot of spirituality in even the verbiage and the sounds of that connects us to our ancestors through that language. Because I was reading one book called the Construction of the Universe. We really don't know, even we just know the quantitative value of numbers. 1 + 1 = 2. But there's a sacred meaning and a symbolic meaning of the number one. Yeah, right. So we don't know those things. So when you throw all those together, when you see these signs, symbols, and configurations and stuff, that all, it's all a part of spirituality, and it's all intertwined. So we need to know those things. So
she's a professor at Russ, but she does have classes at Russ.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So Brother Conkai was so gracious to give me a number again. So I'm gonna call her actually tomorrow and see if she's or Monday to see if she can maybe come on and call into the show and express your views on why we should be learning this, and try to maybe even get her in here to set some up at Cleveland State.
And that's the importance of, as Dr. Ben told me, we got to go back and do the field research, because a lot of things, and I've witnessed this, that I see on the monuments and temples in Middle Nature are not in the books. Are not in
Oh,
a lot
really?
of the, oh
Okay.
no, it's
Okay.
not in the books. Okay, there's a lot of interpretation on those monuments and temples. We've got to go back and start to do the field research. And that's where a lot of times there are repetitions, and there are different periods. You got pre-dynastic, you got the Old Kingdom. I take our groups to Kolobolo in Ta-Nehisi. And groups don't go here, but here you have a pre-dynastic writing. That means during what is known as the New Kingdom of the 18th dynasty, we're talking about over 3,000 years ago, they could not read the pre-dynastic writing. So you got different periods. You got a pre-dynastic, or is what Petrie calls pre-dynastic. You have the Old Kingdom, you have the Middle Kingdom, and you have the New Kingdom. Now the Meroitic writing, okay, in Ta-Nehisi, what is known as Nubia, they have not been able to interpret that at all.
Really?
At all. Okay, and that is the Meroitic writing of Kush, which I equally take the groups to the temples to see that Meroitic writing, as well as Kolobolo, pre-dynastic writing, to see the earliest form of the African writing system. And keep in mind also that this is long before the Sumerians. African people were writing, and now even Europeans and newspapers and documentations are coming out to validate the fact that African people created the first writing system. So equally imagine with our children, the love that they would have for writing, to know that their people, okay, our ancestors started writing.
And that's what, and that's what I want to drive home at this particular point, because, us as adults right now, we're looking at our communities, we see our kids running wild, killing each other and things of that nature. I want you to tell that story quickly, because we want to also give you the information on how you can attend this lecture this evening. You can call in and leave your name and number if you want, 216-578-1490, give you the pertinent information, where you can come on down. We're just going to, come on down to Cleveland State, East 22nd and Chester, 2nd floor, Suite 201. And come in, Dr. Moore is going to be on 2:30, and Brother Kwesi is 5:30. For both lectures, it's $15 for both lectures. Any one lecture is $10. You can't beat that with two sticks. With 2 sticks, you can't beat that. I want you to tell them about that story with the young brother that you met over there.
Yes, well, as we do our educational programs every year, one young lady, she brought her son back because he was failing miserably in school. And he was in the 11th grade. She didn't know what to do with him, and she brought him to Egypt. I said, wow, he gets a trip to Egypt doing bad. But in any case, to make a long story short, there's one particular temple that we go to, Kamumbo, and here we see the world's first medical instruments. It's called the Pra'ankh, or the House of Life, equivalent to what we would call today hospital. Here, there, Imhotep. This is a multi-genius who lived during the Old Kingdom over 5,000 years ago. He was a physician long before Hippocrates. But here, he has the medical instruments. And one doctor, she was able to identify all these medical instruments. But this young man was so impressed with these medical instruments, and this black man, in fact, who he looked like, okay, Imhotep, a lot, with the shaved head, the bald head, he was so impressed. I met that young man years later, and he said, Mr. Kwesi, in Egypt, at the Peranka, the House of Life, that impressed me so much, I am now in med school. I was shocked. I was shocked. That told me that knowledge is power. That means the knowledge is just like a football or basketball when you can see yourself and our ancestors who created it. That young man said, my ancestors created this, I can do this. And now he's I'm sure he's a doctor now. That was many years ago that he told me he was in med school. I wish I could see him again. I wish I could sit down and interview him about the impact of that journey had on him to become a doctor after failing in school. So that shows you the power of knowledge.
Yeah, and you know, it's another story. See, I'm throwing this out there for us to understand the power of knowing this information and getting your kids involved in it. You know, if you got those borderline kids that, you know, this whole thing for love of self is so important, and knowing themselves, you know, knowing that, you know, the martial arts started in Africa, and we taught the Chinese.
Art form.
Yeah, you know, started that. You know, we need to know those. And then I remember you telling me another story that this one guy, he had a school or something in Dallas, and he taught these young guys, and they was on 14 years old, and they already read some of the books that we.
Well, those are independent black institutions, controlled and run by black folks, okay, run by our people. So this is the importance when you have your own schools, when you have your own curriculum. We have a lot of information. When you go back to the early scribes and you go back to the session, you can see that these are Africans who made the first writing. Here they're the ones who wrote the first holy writings that became the various Bibles as we know today. But of course, when we see the representations of Europeans or the writers of the book or inspired by God, then of course this is in our psyche. And we have no idea. I'm going to show from the books in stone that African people are writing and showing what these are Africans on these reliefs that I'm going to show tonight. So when we have our own institutions and we start to teach this information, this is power. This is what we see.
Actually, turn around the whole person's thought.
You can turn around the whole community. We can turn around our whole race when we start to educate. If a cat goes to dog school and the cat comes out saying bow wow instead of meow, then you know some dog messed that cat up. Okay, I mean this is just natural stuff. Okay, natural stuff. So here these young. Annually, every year, the Organization of Black Unity, they send children, as well as the Marcus Garvey School in Los Angeles that my children went to. They send children with us every year. And many of the brothers and sisters who travel with us are just amazed at what they know. I mean, they have to read Chancellor Williams in the grade school. Okay, Dr. Chancellor Williams, Instruction to Black Civilization. They got to read Dr. Ben's Black Man of the Now. Okay, before they get to middle school.
Wow.
They've got to read Check Out the Diop's book, okay, before they get to middle school, as well as Drusilla Dungeon Houston, the Kushite Empire.
And that's the importance. This is the importance of having and teaching your own. I'm telling your story, huh?
Right. This is power. So I mean, of course, you're going to have the little a white child is going to do well in school when they see nothing but they're going to see Eratosthenes, they're going to see Kepler, Copernicus, and all these Europeans did all these things. That's inspiring them.
That's right.
But what happens when a black child shows that Ptah or Hotep and also Imhotep, these were the early writers, these were the early astrophysicists. Here's an African who gave us the circumference of the earth long before Eratosthenes. Here's an African who knew what is called the heliocentric idea that the sun is in the center of the solar system long before Copernicus. That is inspiring for that black child, especially when that black child sees that Imhotep looks just like him. Okay? So we are taught to deify the Europeans, and through the deification of Europeans, we have a low self-esteem of ourselves, and that does not empower us as a people. So this shows the power of knowledge.
Yeah, we got another call on. We got Francis on the line. Francis, how you doing, and welcome to the show.
Hey, Brother Antonio.
How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I was calling because I was listening to the doctor about the institutions. And of course, you know, we've been trying to get the African American Museum reopened for a couple of years. And I just totally agree with everything he said, which is what inspired the small group of us that's trying to get it reestablished to do so. And a lot of us will be up there tonight to listen to his lectures. And a point I wanted to bring up is when I went to Haiti, excuse me, right before the earthquake, we were taken to a place called Cape Haitian, and they had a fort called the Citadel, and it reminded me of the pyramids because this fort, I guess this was after the Haitians ran out the Europeans, they built this fort about 5 miles above sea level, and it's big as a city block. And a lot of people don't know about it, and I had never heard of it. And it just kind of reminded me of the pyramids, that these people were able to drag these big bricks and boulders and build this huge fort at the highest mountain in Haiti.
Wow.
And also they have, it's a museum now, so they also have all these cannonballs that when they took these ships, and they have these cannons and every window all, 4 ways around, and each cannon comes, like the guy was saying, well, these are French cannons, these are Dutch cannons, these are English cannons, so they conquered a lot of Europeans during that time, and I just wonder, was the doctor familiar, and I'll take my answer offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this again speaks of holistic African knowledge. That means there are many different areas that we have to study and research, and that also shows that we are a global African people. We speak of Egypt because we have evidence of the Western civilization. A lot of things that we've been taught to believe through the Bible and civilization came up out of Africa and spread around the world. So equally, when we go to Haiti, whether we go to what is called Mexico, or as peace be upon him, Dr. Van Sertima, who wrote his book, We Came Before Columbus, validating that Africans came across the Atlantic Ocean. And when we look at Teotihuacan and we see that pyramid, where's the prototype of the pyramid? It came from Africa, it came from Egypt. When we look at Chichen Itza, where did Chichen Itza and that step pyramid in what is now called Mexico, where did it come from? It came from Saqqara, built by Imhotep. So again, that shows that we are a global African people, and we have to look at everywhere around the world that we look at, but specifically going back to the fallopian tube of the Nile Valley that validates where it all came from.
Yeah, you can't let a lion know he's a lion. You got to keep him thinking he's a pussycat.
Right.
You ain't done nothing, no contributions, and you just was there, looking at civilization pass you by. And so it's so important to read and to study, because when you read and study, you take all that information of like tonight. We're going to take your 31 years of information and absorb all this information.
And I can't give it all tonight. That's why this is my third time here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the first time we dealt with the African origin of Christianity. The second time, the African origin of civilization, reclaiming the African genius. And tonight, African spirituality, the origin of the Bible. So that goes to tell us you can't get it all in one night.
Yeah,
but it will inspire you to want to. That's
Absolutely.
my objective, is to inspire brothers and sisters to go after this information, to awaken. And the purpose and the objective ultimately is to start to build our own schools and our own institutions to teach our own children.
Absolutely, and that's ever so important because history, you don't know it. Like they say, it's up to repeat itself, and I think it's very important, and I think it just brings forth that self-esteem, make you feel better about yourself. You think twice about doing any crazy atrocities to one another in the community, because you feel good about yourself. Right. And what do our kids, what they see in 50 Cent, on how he shoots somebody, how he gangsters somebody, this new car that he gets, is that the images?
Right. And this goes out all over the world too. When you in the highlands of Ethiopia and Axum, here's a young man, he's got a 50 Cent t-shirt on.
Really?
Right. I'm just shocked, that they're spreading this type of negative image all over the world to keep that planet deep, not only in African people's mind, black people's mind in America, but wherever African people are on the planet.
And that's one of the things we really need to understand, because a lot of times you come in contact with some of the Africans that come over here. You gotta understand, they were already in Africa with their stuff. Because I went in Ghana, and you way back up in the hill there, and you see this big old church sitting back. You're like, how did this thing get way back up in here? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's amazing. So we need to understand that, and I think folks work hard and trying to keep keep us separated,
right,
and keep you.
Oppression is also the oppression of the mind, of knowledge of self, and this is what we have to look at, and that's why we want to deal with some of these chronologies and stories tonight in relationship to the Bible, because that's one of the very strongholds that African people, that we believe in. We are naturally, first of all, a very spiritual people. This is not taking away from the natural spirituality. It's not taking away that power of the divine of God from us. African people, if it was not for African people, the world would not even have an idea of God, first of all. Okay, so when we're dealing with that, this is a natural spiritual way of life. And I'm saying the natural cake is there. There's the wrong icing on the cake.
So tonight, y'all, come on down to Cleveland State. Dr. Moore is going to be talking about melanin. He wrote the book Dark Matter, Dark Secrets. That's another part of knowing thyself, knowing about you. There could be things that you're doing every day that could be detrimental to you, and you don't even know it. And it's folks live and die, go through their whole life and don't even know about their physiology. And that's a shame. That's a shame on us. Not to even venture out, even want to know about that self, you know. And so he's going to be starting at 2:30. He's doing the melanin lecture tonight, starting at 2:30. Dr. Moore, you want to see that? Then Brother Kwesi will be on at 5:30. Doors open about 5:30 at Cleveland State. All right, come on down. Be a part of this. Get your knowledge on, as they say, and learn something so you can pass on to your kids. And hopefully it inspire you to take those steps and doing some research and investigate. Because what Brother Kwesi brings, you're going to be fighting with yourself mentally, because you're going to be seeing things that you be like, what? I don't believe it. You know what I mean? And that's what I like about Brother Kwesi, because he give you documentation right in your face, and you're going to have to deal with it one way or another. So come on out tonight. Brother Terry King Bay will be there tonight, passing out a little information about, because we got to think about health, and then Brother Kwesi is very in tune to that. You know, what you feed the body is what you feed the brain, and the mind, body, and soul and spirituality is all connected. So Brother Terry King Bay always doing his things on Thursdays at 6 o'clock at Shaker Heights Library. He's going to be doing an herb class so you can learn how to heal yourself. You know, and stay healthy. Because when times get hard and them dollars and cents get tight, you got to learn how to take care of yourself and be healthy, because that medical cost and everything is going what? Up. You know, and a lot of these institutions, for these hospitals, are building and expanding. So you got to take care of yourself. Going out at 6 o'clock on Thursdays to listen to Brother Terry King Bay as well and get your knowledge on. So come on out tonight. You can give me a call after the show, 216-323-6155. Well, come on down. Just come on down. We'll take care of you. If you don't have any tickets, if you're in the St. Clair area, Charters Cleaners at 114th and St. Clair, they have some tickets as well. Or just come on down. We'll take care. There's no extra fee for paying at the door. We're going to take care of you, because we ain't trying to stop you from coming down. We're trying to help you and make it easy for you to come down. So if you don't have no tickets, don't worry about it.
We have a good time with knowledge. Knowledge, you know, we can say you'll have a good time with it. A lot of times we come around these European classrooms, as I call the psychological, in some cases, gas chambers. When you come out here, if you know nothing about yourself and you were beat up on, then you have to ask, well, what is it then? So, of course, as Dr. John Henry Clark, peace be upon him, would say, images shape our reality. And we've got to have that reality shaped from what our ancestors put forward on those ancient monuments and temples. So we're going to have a good time with this information, and have a critical analytical analysis and looking at the information and do a comparative analysis from the books in stone. So that's what we want to look at. As our ancestors said, we must know thyself.
Absolutely. That's some good closing words. Do you know yourself? Really? Do you really know yourself? All right. Hey, bring your pastors on down with you. Yeah, let's talk about this thing. Let's iron this thing out. You know, it's time, you know, for us to unlift the veil, because we enter into the age of Aquarius, where all shall be unveiled. And it's a lot of things coming out. For those who have ears to hear and eyes to see, it's there for you. You got to seek, search, seek, and ye shall find. Come on out tonight. I dare you to come on down tonight and get some of this information. Tonight, give me a call, 216-323-6155. And until next week, Brother Kwesi, any closing words? We got 10 seconds.
Well, what can I say, brother? Know thyself. This information is a communiversity, and come out so we can see it for ourselves. That's what it's all about. And I can guarantee you that you will start to investigate and look much further than what you have looked today.
Absolutely. Brother Kaka from Pittsburgh. And to all y'all, see y'all there later. All right.
Things always always goes about 1,000 things I want to say.
Yeah, it's always like that. I'm sure we'll forget what else. Cool in the game.
But you've had some nice audiences out for the last programs we've had, though.
Yeah, I'm
The main thing is, you know, hitting the masses and the grassroots people, because they're the ones that make a difference, and that's the reason why the whole African-centered movement was attacked in the '90s. It didn't reach the masses. It was a university thing, and the masses never knew what happened because we didn't make it a movement. And that's what we've got to make sure we do this time is to enlighten the masses of the grassroots audience of this information. So when it does come under attack, the people will protect it because they know it's our knowledge.
How we make these folks wanting to want this. You know, we got to put it in a rap song and make it.
One of the things that I do at my lectures, I try not to make it, you know, that boring intellectual. Okay, we've got to inspire, we've got to motivate, have a good time with it. You know, that's what I've learned from my teachers. You know, I noticed, you know, with Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, you know, they made sure that, you know, they activated all your emotions. They make you happy, they make you sad, they make you mad, they make you glad. So when you start to evoke all those energies, that means that there's something going on inside of you, you know, for you to inspire. So that's the reasons why it's got to be on that level. You know, you've got to be inspiring and motivating. Because our people come out of, Dr. Ben told me one time, we come out of that entertainment type of world. You know, we want something, we've been beat down so bad, we want something to make us feel good. We want to, so you got to have it all in there. Okay, the information is not all going to make you feel good, but there's going to be a lot of it that's going to lift you up.
Well, just that and that delivery, you know what I mean? How you present, how you present your presentation. You know, it's all, you know, and you relax folks, because some folks, you know, sometimes maybe coming right at you, okay, I'm ready to, come on.
Right.
Yeah, baby, come on.
We had a sister came to Egypt with us, and she came to Egypt, she thought she was just coming on just one of these regular tours she'd probably been on most of her life. And she comes in there, and you ain't going to talk about my Jesus. We're in Egypt. You ain't going to talk about my Jesus.
She came all the way to Kwesi.
But you know, at the end of the tour, 15 days, this sister comes, and I said, what happened to that sister that told me at the beginning of the tour, what about my Jesus? She said, oh, no, don't even mention that to me. That she had transformed in 15 days. And she did not want to be reminded of herself in that first day. Because those monuments and temples did it all. And that's the power of it. That's the power of it when we start to deal with this information. And walking, you know, through those monuments and temples and brothers and sisters seeing all this information. So again, you know, we are great, you know, that we are able to have this now at our disposal. Many brothers and sisters talked about it for many, many years. In the 1700s, brothers and sisters talked about it. But now we're going back. We're going back to the monuments. We're going back to these sacred places. We're not going to mystical worlds. We're going to holy ground. In fact, the world's first sacred ground, the world's first holy land, and starting to see it for ourselves. And of course, once you have this information and once you have it in your genetic memory bank, you can never forget it. It's like education. You know, no one can take that away from you once you're aware of it, once you know about it. It's always a part of you. And in the African Communiversity, that's the one reason why it's so important, because this information does not come from one element. There are many, many elements of our teaching in this information. So we've got to deal with not only the history, the religion. We can't run in the closet when it comes to the religion. Okay, we got to deal with all of it, health and all these things.
Absolutely.
And there are many people out there dealing with all of it. I call it the eye in the broken glass syndrome. Okay, meaning that if you take a mirror and put it up to your face, you see what? Your face. But if someone takes and knocks that mirror out your hand and it breaks up on the ground in many pieces, you pick up one piece and you say, I got it. No, you don't got it. You only see your eye. But there are many other pieces that got to be put together to put that mirror together to see our whole face again. So we all have a piece. And that's why we're honored, brother, that you're bringing in so many people in this community, so the many different aspects for our people to see who we are as a people. Many pieces has to be put together. One person doesn't have it all. And I'll be the first to say that I don't have it all. I have one of the pieces of the many pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, it is. You know, we got to put it all together, man, because it's so much work has been done to defragment. You know what I mean? So it ain't gonna come together just like that. You know, some got it here. Mum's been the word for a long time, because some of those tribes with the Dogons and all that, they tight-lipped about some of this stuff, because they know they seen the invaders can't come in, and they say, okay, we're gonna shut it down, you know, and only certain folks, open up, to this
sacred knowledge,
to the sacred knowledge. Absolutely,
system.
yeah, so. So we gonna have a good time with it tonight, and it's gonna be good.
Is he kicking us out?
No, you got another phone call out.
Okay. Well, that's one thing about traveling to Kemet, is that you're traveling through all these time zones. You're traveling through all these time zones. Like I spoke of earlier, Kolobolo, a pre-dynastic period, thousands of years before the Old Kingdom, and then of course you got the Old Kingdom, and you got the Middle Kingdom, and also the New Kingdom. So you have all these periods of time, and it's just unbelievable that you can go through so many time zones. You can't go through a time zone in Europe like that. You can't go to an early pre-dynastic kingdom in Europe, okay? These people were cave people at this time. And that's why it's important for us to understand chronology and times and events dealing with African people. Now, when we deal with the Europeans who have documented things in Africa and so forth, we can see that it still takes them back to Africa. It still brings us back to some of the earliest kingdoms that I show our groups in Ta-Nehisi or Nubia of Wadi Halfa, 55,000 to 65,000 years ago. We're an ancient people. Just recently with the finding of Adaltu, 165,000 years ago. So somebody knows something about African people that they do not want us to know about ourselves. And it's time for us to find out about ourselves and not let others dictate to us, because in many cases when we have someone outside of us researching for us, they're not always going to tell us the truth. We can't expect discover anything for us. We can't expect the History Channel. So we have got to start to get out there to investigate this knowledge, and that's what it's all about, and put all the pieces together of this historical chronology of African people. In some cases, it can be a jigsaw puzzle. But of course, like any jigsaw puzzle, once you put the pieces all together, you can see it's one big, beautiful African story once the picture is put together. Mm-hmm. So we are honored to be here in Cleveland for another communiversity, as Bobby Wright said, to educate, to liberate. That's what it's all about. Educate to liberate. And as long as I know I can inspire somebody, I can motivate our brothers and sisters to think beyond the Western world, because he who circumscribes your circumference determines the diameter of your thinking. It's unfortunate our thinking